What percentage of Idaho's land is controlled by the federal government?
So it's actually 63%, but you have to cut out the military bases and the Indian reservations, which leaves 61% of Idaho's land is being unconstitutionally controlled by the federal government. 61%. Yeah, and Matt, just to add another statistic on top of that, 72% subsurface mineral rights are being controlled by the federal government in Idaho.
Say that again.
72% of the subsurface mineral rights are being controlled by the federal government. So 61%
So how does that
of the
impact
land.
businesses, citizens in Idaho?
Well, so
I mean, this isn't stuff I think through, and so
no,
I'm
and
interested why it's
so
a huge deal.
it is huge. It's huge for every Idahoan. It's one of the most concerning things that is happening in our state because it's causing four major problems. One is Idaho has not been able to pay its own bills for the last 38 years because the federal government is controlling our land and our resources, and that's where wealth is generated. And so we are not able to use that. So we can't pay our own bills. So we have to go back to the federal government and ask for them. And they give us about 36%. So over a third of our budget comes from the federal government, and all of it comes with strings attached to it. So that's why we get Common Core in our schools, critical race theory. That's why the use of force policy, federal use of force policies in our policing agencies. That's why, our little counties are pushing federal and UN type building codes in our counties. It's all because we're taking this money and they're saying, if you take this money, you have to do this. And so we can't pay our own bills. We can't be an independent state because they're controlling our land. That's number one. Number two is we're creating an affordable housing crisis here. We're landlocked and we can't build outside the small area that we're landlocked in. And so we're all fighting over the land that's available. It's a supply and demand issue. And so land prices are way high. Not only that, building prices are way high because we can't harvest our own forests. We can't mine. We can't, use our own natural resources in the state. So we have to import them. For example, Bonner's Ferry, which is heavily wooded forest, beautiful forests, they're importing lumber out of Canada and paying 4 times the price. It just doesn't make sense. So our building and our housing costs are enormous because of this land control. Number 3 is where we are building. We're building on our agricultural land, so we're destroying our number one industry in Idaho. And we're more and more we're building massive amounts of houses rather than building out on these hills and areas where it's perfect places to build and preserving our agricultural land. Because the federal government won't let us build on it, we are building on our agricultural land and destroying our number one industry. And then last but not least, because of this control and this landlocked issue, the young people are growing up and they're not able to stay in these little towns. They're having to move to the cities. And so our cities are building up high-rise apartments rather than building out. We're getting smog and traffic and all of this. And when that happens, it just naturally we lose our conservative identity and we get a population that's so dense that they began to control politically the rest of the state. And that is certainly happening as well. It's all these problems are happening because of the federal land control, and it's completely unconstitutional. In fact, I'll give you a statistic to kind of just wrap this up on. If you go to Nebraska, which was established right around the same time as Idaho, just a few years earlier, Nebraska has 1.4% federally controlled land. Idaho has 61%. If you take a line and draw it, well, I'm going to point it out. If you take a line and on the Colorado Rockies and you go east of the Colorado Rockies, it's the average federally controlled land east of the Colorado Rockies is 2.4%. West of the Colorado Rockies is 51% federally controlled. And what happened was the West was very arid and it was developed later. And people didn't populate it and come in and claim it. So the federal government actually in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s began claiming this land as theirs, right in the middle of the states. And it's completely unconstitutional, and it's made the states in the West, 11 Western states, like second-class states, where we can't pay our own bills, we can't use our own land, we can't use our own natural resources. We are truly like second-class citizens in the United States of America. And that's
Wow.
what it's become. And we have to fight these battles. We have to fight this battle. And I plan on, as governor, taking back these lands, fighting that constitutional battle, and getting them in the hands of the people of the state of Idaho.